Those of you that are tuning in, we'll just give a couple of minutes here for a few last-minute participants to join in. Well, ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining what is to be a very special discussion here today. My name is Brian Finley. I'm the president and CEO of the Stimson Center here in Washington, D.C. And I'm so pleased to have the honor to host this virtual book launch discussion. This, of course, is the launch of Heidi Kuhn's recently published memoir, Breaking Ground. And for those of you who, like I, have had the pleasure of getting to know Heidi, one, you are extremely fortunate, and two, you also understand that Heidi is a true force of nature, and her work through Roots for Peace is truly selfless and really remarkably inspiring. And the book that you will learn a little bit more about, and I really do commend to all of our listeners and to your friends and family and others that are looking for a little positivity in a troubled world right now. I think the positive impact that this one individual has had on the lives of countless folks around the world, many of whom are in and live in the most desperate of circumstances, is a truly humbling story for all of us. And so again, I really do commend the book to you. Heidi, I'm so honored to be invited to do this. I've been looking forward to this for months. I'm so sorry we have to do this virtually. We literally cannot reach out and touch one another. But I'm pleased that we can at least get together virtually and help launch the book. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to do this and for joining us here today. As many of you know, the Stimson Center for the past 30 years has acted very practically in very practical ways to address pressing challenges to international security, to prosperity, to common justice. And that has included, of course, a long history of working to address the impact of conflict on civilians, to build practical and creative solutions to threats to international security, as I mentioned, and to shared prosperity. And so it's an issue, these are issues, of course, that are very passionate to us at Stimson. And for that reason, and for those reasons, it was really a no-brainer for us to host this event today. Plus the fact that I would walk over hot coals for Heidi Kuhn if she asked me to. So it was, as I say, it was a no-brainer for Stimson to host this event, and I'm grateful to all of you for tuning in. Before we proceed with the discussion, I just want to highlight that our Southeast Asia program here at the Stimson Center recently launched what they are calling the War Legacies Working Group. And that initiative was formed back in late 2018. Heidi and Roots for Peace were founding members of that initiative. The War Legacies Working Group here at Stimson seeks to build partnerships throughout the United States and across Southeast Asia to address the consequences of the Vietnam War, of other conflicts in the region related to unexploded ordnance, Agent Orange, mine clearance, and so forth, hence the connection to Roots of Peace. Addressing, of course, the consequences of conflict in that region and elsewhere is not just the right thing to do. It also creates, I think, mutually beneficial opportunities between former enemies to come together and launch initiatives to sustain peace, to provide pathways to new development opportunities, to improve diplomatic ties, to improve economic ties between the region and those of us that live here in the United States. If you find interest in that, I would encourage you to check out our website. It is here on the banner behind me. You can go and visit not just the Stimson page, but you can learn more about the War Legacies Working Group, and I really do encourage you to do so and to get involved. As I say, Heidi, I'm really honored to host this discussion for your recently published memoir, Breaking Ground: From Landmines to Grapevines, One Woman's Mission to Heal the World. And again, I really do commend it to all of the viewers here today. It's a truly inspiring story. So thank you again for giving us the opportunity. Today's discussion will be moderated by a true professional in this space. Cheryl Jennings is a former ABC News anchor and is the founder of Cheryl Cam Media. I will hand things over to her to get the discussion going and to moderate it. Cheryl, thank you so much for doing this, and I really look forward to the discussion. Oh, there we go. We're gonna unmute you here. There we go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. President, Brian Finley. I appreciate the opportunity to be a part of this important discussion. And thank you so much to the Stimson Center. I had the great pleasure of visiting your location a while back and got to meet some of your wonderful people. So yes, I'm all in. If you need me, I'm there. And you're absolutely right about Heidi Kuhn. She is a force of nature. So I want to let you know that it's really a privilege to be able to engage with you and your viewers. And of course, our esteemed guest, Ambassador Kenneth Quinn, and Heidi Kuhn, the Roots of Peace founder and brand new author of a bestseller on Amazon, Breaking Ground, so that the sales are extraordinary. You're going to hear from Heidi in just a few minutes about her incredible journey. So I want to let folks know how this event is going to work right now, though. We're going to take questions from everybody after we hear from Ambassador Quinn and after we hear from Heidi Kuhn. So you can submit the questions through the chat feature, and those questions will get to me. And then I will get to as many of those questions as we can before time runs out at 1:30 your time. So right now, it is my great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, Ambassador Kenneth Quinn. He has many titles, but let me tell you a little bit about his background. He served 32 years as an American diplomat focusing on refugee and humanitarian relief. He has had an incredibly exciting life so far, with a lot more to come. And it's amazing when you're working live what things pop up on your screen while you're trying to talk. He was the U.S. ambassador to the Kingdom of Cambodia, and that was a very dangerous time for him and his family. They survived a bombing attack there. And he can tell you incredibly wonderful stories about his life as an early diplomat who had to carry a gun. Other people were learning about the cultures of life. He was learning weapons training, and that happened during his 6 years of service while he was in Vietnam. And there he learned to speak Vietnamese so well, I love this, that he later served as interpreter for President Ford in the White House. Pretty remarkable. So he completed his tenure in Cambodia and was then invited to lead the World Food Prize Foundation in Des Moines, Iowa. And he did that for 20 highly successful years. Just retired this year, but obviously he can't retire because he's with us now. He is now the President Emeritus of the World Food Prize Foundation. And he said it's an honor that he could never have imagined when he left Cambodia in 1999. He describes it as going from the killing fields to the field of dreams. The World Food Prize is considered the Nobel Prize of Food and Agriculture. He just met Heidi Kuhn this past year and discovered their goals are the same: peace through agriculture. So it is with great pleasure, pride, and affection that I introduce to you Ambassador Quinn.
Thank you, Cheryl, for that very nice introduction. I'm so pleased to be here and be part of this morning. I was watching Spike Lee's new film the other night, and it's about 4 African-American veterans, all about the age of 70, going back to Vietnam in the year 2020. They're out in a remote part of the country, looking to see if they can find the remains and fate of one of their other comrades. And as they're walking around in the hill, suddenly one of them steps on a landmine. And there's this horrific explosion. His body is blown apart. He dies on the spot. And it brought back a flood of memories for me, but particularly of meeting Heidi, because here, 45 years after the end of the Vietnam War, there was still another casualty from that war being recorded. And when I met Heidi, it wasn't in Vietnam or any place. It was here in Des Moines, Iowa, where I'm speaking to you today at the World Food Prize Symposium. Our theme was Peace Through Agriculture. I had invited her to come and join the former director of Central Intelligence, the head of USAID, 5 or 6 ambassadors, ministers from Cambodia, Asia, Africa. And we're meeting for the first time and shaking hands. And she's kind of giving me the elevator pitch of what she does about mines. And I said, oh, I've been involved in landmines a fair amount. And when I talk, I always end with this sentence, that it's sobering to reflect on the fact that 80 years after its conclusion, the last casualty of World War II has yet to take place because of all the leftover bombs and landmines from that conflict. And our handshake, you know, you can tell when you're shaking hands with somebody, it's happening, turned into this strong grip as kind of squeezed each other's hands and discovered that we were kind of soulmates on this issue. And over the next 2 days, I listened to Heidi describe what she's doing through Roots of Peace in Croatia, Afghanistan, Vietnam, planting peace, healing the wounds of war wherever she went. And I was just mesmerized. And we had to, it was a very busy time, but we finally had a quiet moment. And she said, oh, Ambassador, tell me, how did you're a diplomat, how did you get involved with landmines? And I said, well, Heidi, in 1967, I was a 25-year-old kid from Dubuque, Iowa. I'd never been outside of the US. I show up in Washington, DC with these visions of diplomatic sugar plums dancing in my head. I was going to be going to London or Paris or Vienna. I'd be sipping aperitifs and chandeliered ballrooms. And then I was told, well, you're under 26, you're draft eligible, haven't been in the military. And before I knew what happened, they were shipping me to Vietnam, not to the embassy, but out in the provinces, deployed with the US Army. And so my training, while my colleagues are going off to learn how to issue visas and at night sampling wine so they can make informed comments at the dinner parties they'd be attending, I'm out in the gun shops in DC trying to figure out which handgun to buy and take with me, and then going to Fort Bragg, Fort Belvoir, at these special warfare training sites, and including walking down the booby trap trail where they have all these landmines set. They're not, no explosives, but you hit the tripwire, you fall through there's a mine in the attached in the tree. And, you know, usually you like to finish first. I finished first twice. I had the ignominious distinction of setting off the most booby traps. But the training prepared me for going to Vietnam. I was out in jungles with troops. I learned the most important lesson: watch the person in front of you, always step where they step, and that. And around us, mines are going off. People are being wounded, and that. But I saw firsthand what these landmines, these unexploded ordnance could do. And so in 15 years later, 1990, I was in the lead of negotiating, reestablishing diplomatic relations with Vietnam. The very first assistance we provided, $1 million, was to aid war victims, the innocent victims who had lost a leg or a hand because of those landmines, because of those bombs left behind. And I then went and became ambassador to Cambodia, and the Khmer Rouge, the worst genocidal mass murderers, the second half of the 20th century, were there. They had landmines everywhere. It was just incredible. So many people had lost limbs. And to get at them, we had to open the roads. We had to get new agricultural development in to undermine them. They were still there. And so not only had to talk the talk, I had to walk the walk. I walked with deminers out in the roads. I'd kneel with them with their trowels, digging down into the road, seeing if you can hit metal. And when you find it, then you put a charge there and blow it up. And as I'm kneeling there, suddenly up in front of me, not far away, there's this huge explosion. It shakes the ground it was like in the Spike Lee movie. And that's how big those landmines were, anti-tank mines. I came back after that. My dear friend, the late Ambassador Richard Holbrooke, was our representative to the UN. He said, we've got to get support for this. Come to dinner at my residence. And I'm there with senior officials from the UN and Sir Paul McCartney, Michael Douglas, Catherine Zeta-Jones, Barbara Walters. You know, it was my one time meeting A-list celebrities, but telling them about landmines, about the devastating impact of them. And and I finished that story. Heidi said, you got to come with me. We're going to Vietnam in January of this year. So I was retiring and I said, all right, it'll be great. My life will come back full circle. So on New Year's Day, my wife and I arrived just at the same time as the terrible corona COVID-19 virus was getting set to begin its pandemic journey. And with Heidi, I got to see what that other pandemic, that pandemic of landmines that affects 70 countries around the world, 100 million people on this, what it's doing. And so we were in Hanoi and I saw how Heidi was received by the senior officials at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. She is such an incredible representative of peace and of healing the wounds of war. And then we went to Quang Tri province in the center of Vietnam. And I heard Heidi say, you know, there are more bombs dropped in this one province by Americans than in all of World War I and World War II combined. And I saw literally how she was breaking ground literally through her work in helping farmers, allowing them through demining and then assistance to them with agricultural, introducing new crops, providing export opportunities. But it was also there that I saw what I believe is Heidi's most endearing quality. As we met the mothers who had lost children, the widows who had lost husbands, we met farmers who had lost limbs. Incredible, one farmer had lost both of his hands and he took Heidi out and he could pick fruit off a tree and give it to her. And I saw the passion, the heart, the caring as the tears are running down her face as she's hugging people and they're crying as well. It's an incredible moment. And then we walked in the minefields together with the mine advisory group. We saw them prepare to identify and blow up more mines. And Heidi and I had the opportunity together to each put our finger on that button and push. It was her birthday. I won't say how old you are, Heidi. But it was the best birthday present she could have, destroying one of those mines. Well, as I said, we need to push that button another 100 million times, but you can do that. You can join with Heidi just by buying her book. And that because she's committed some of the proceeds from the sale of the book to supporting Roots of Peace, supporting the Mine Awareness Group, supporting demining. You can put your finger on that button. And plus, it's a great story. It's actually 3 great stories. It's a story about these terrible, insidious weapons, these devastating killers. It's a story about those unfortunate people, those victims that she's met along the way. And it's a story about the inspiration that took a young woman, still a young woman in my view, and then for this young woman on this incredible odyssey of making a difference in the world and building and planting peace. And I could tell you about that inspiration, but I think that this video will do a much better job than I could.
Save people and animals. They applied lessons they learned through their Roots of Peace model in Afghanistan. First, remove the landmines, and then help the farmers improve their crop yields for food and for export. 14 years later, it's having a stunning effect on the economy's gross domestic product.
We've pushed up the GDP of the country. Our projects impact the GDP, 2 or 3%. At the farm level, it's people changing their lives because now they have enough money for education and health. They don't need handouts.
Roots of Peace has worked in more than half a dozen countries removing landmines and restoring farmland. They are ready for Prince Harry's challenge in his mother's memory.
I think she'd be proud of her son and what he's doing, because this was one of her top causes.
We can take the words of her son and in the next 8 years follow up on that call to action and eradicate all landmines by 2025. It would be a miracle.
Cheryl Jennings, ABC 7 News.
Well, we apologize for the audio problems on that video, but I think you get the gist of it, that Roots of Peace's programs are incredibly successful right now. I want to thank the ambassador for his wonderful and warm opening remarks about Heidi and her book, and for introducing the video of the woman who inspired Heidi to start all of this many years ago, the founder of Roots of Peace, Heidi Kuhn, our very own citizen diplomat. I met Heidi at a social gathering myself in 2003. This was in Marin County. And it was because I'd heard this person I didn't know talking about landmines. And that is not the kind of conversation I usually hear when wine is involved. So I wandered over there and thought, okay, I'm intrigued because I had been to Kosovo in 1999 and 2001, where with the CARE International for ABC News in San Francisco. And I walked through minefields there with the deminers, and they explained to me how this keeps a country from going forward. I saw firsthand that, sure, as the ambassador said, the war might be over, but children, adults, and animals were either being killed or maimed, and their lives changed forever, and the country couldn't even feed itself. So I went back in 2001 after CARE used my videos to raise money, and I saw farm fields in full bloom and people able to feed themselves. So it resonated with me that, yes, agriculture, peace, those two do work together. The business of peace and peace through agriculture. So those things stay with me when I work with Heidi, and I followed her work since 2003 now, ever since then. When I asked Heidi about her work and why nobody had heard of her organization way back then, she said it's because people here cannot relate to landmines. It's not something we see in America. Unless you've served in the military, either as a diplomat or in any capacity, or especially in the military, you really don't understand how destructive landmines can be. I told Heidi I wanted to help. So I followed her to minefields in Afghanistan, the Middle East, and Vietnam to help her raise awareness and money. And through our news stories, we were able to do that consistently. And my station at ABC 7 in San Francisco has been a longtime supporter of this effort because it's not political. There's no other side of a landmine if you're a person living in that country. Landmines kill. The war is over. So the goal is to get the landmines and the unexploded bombs out. And I really embraced that with Heidi and decided to become her partner in that. And my husband as well, who doesn't even work in television. He's a wealth advisor for Merrill Lynch, but he became our photographer overseas. He was so committed to this cause. That's how people who are just citizens can become involved. You just make a decision to be a volunteer and go for it. The Roots of Peace programs, as you see, are very successful, but the dream did not happen right away. She was set back because as a young woman, she was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. But I want Heidi to tell that story. She has so much to say. So it gives me great pleasure and a huge honor to introduce my friend and colleague, Heidi Kuhn.
Thank you so much, Cheryl. It is my greatest honor, and I'm humbled and honored to be here to speak with you and to really express my sincere gratitude to all those who are listening and have been involved in planting the roots of peace on Earth. And I just want to say that, you know, Cheryl, thank you for mentioning that about cancer, because 10 years ago, I was at the Stimson Center and taking the hand of a little boy at the invitation of Ambassador Lincoln Bloomfield. His name was Daniel Yuval, and he had just lost his leg earlier that year to a landmine that was buried in the snow while playing in the Golan Heights. And 20 years prior to that time, I was diagnosed with cancer as a mother of 3 children, ages 1, 3, and 5. And yes, Ambassador, I was 30 years young. And as I think anyone who goes under cancer, under the knife, it's a defining moment when you're given last rites, and you make a little prayer between, you know, yourself and your maker. And mine was, dear God, grant me the gift of life, and I will do something special with it. Well, that was called to action 3 weeks after the late Princess Diana had died. And I realized, as the world was so stunned, cancer is a landmine, because we never know when we're going to step on it. And landmines are a cancer to the earth. And in my case, it was removal. And so I'm just so honored to be here with you today. I've more than doubled my life, Ambassador. I was 30 years old, and now I'm 62 years young. And I'm just getting started with those footsteps for peace that I promised. So let me tell you about my journey, and thank you so much for the honor of launching my book, Breaking Ground, at the Distinguished Stimson Center. Who would have imagined earlier this year when I met with Brian Eiler that we would be here and doing this via Zoom. But Roots of Peace has experienced many, many obstacles over the past 23 years since we made that visionary Minds to Vines toast in the living room of our home where I am speaking. It was 3 weeks after, as I mentioned, the late Princess Diana had tragically died. And we were aware as a world that, let's see, let me see if I can change this. Okay, that there are landmines. There's 60 million landmines today, silently poised in 70 countries. And it's our responsibility to remove them, just like cancer. So I set out on a journey after Jerry White came into my home on September 23rd. Most people took off their shoes when they enter my home. He took off his leg and his prosthesis, and walked in, and our 4 children, I had given birth to a child after surviving cancer, and it was my little miracle baby. And it was just an opportunity when I saw that I couldn't turn my back. When I heard that it takes only 8 pounds to detonate a landmine, which is the average weight of a newborn child. Many people came together, and my congresswoman decided to attend an event that I hosted at the World Trade Center. Bobby Mueller, I didn't have a penny to my name, but he generously funded the event, and 100 women from around the San Francisco Bay Area came. Without a nickel, we made a commitment to turn mines into vines. I must say, I thank our congressman, Nancy Pelosi. She whispered in my ear, "I will be with you as long as it takes." And I thank her because I have had the honor as a mother and now a grandmother to listen to her as the gavel went down when she was sworn in as Speaker of the House. Many other people came to support Mrs. Kofi Annan, and of course her dear husband, the late Secretary General Kofi Annan, with a beautiful quote, and it is the humble seeds of life that are in violation. Landmines hold the world hostage. Land that is fertile and may grow into a fruitful harvest is held hostage. And UN Landmine Awareness Day is April 4th. I find the words of my grandmother so fitting. She always told me, "Coincidence is a miracle in which God prefers to remain anonymous." And as I look back at what is happening today, where mothers around the world are shelter in place on a continual basis because for fear of their children stepping outside and losing a limb by kicking a soccer ball out of bounds in their backyard. April 4th also coincides with the last footstep, was the assassination of Martin Luther King. And I must say, as we watch these events emerge around the world, that landmines know no color, they know no politics, they know no religion. And as we demine the soil, we must demine the soul and take the landmines out of the ground, out of our hearts and out of our minds. But we must replace it with the seeds of love, of compassion, of understanding, and the fruit of the vine, the work of human hands that happened, the magic of thousands of years ago. When you plant a seed, it grows, in contrast to the planting of a landmine. Many California vintners supported Roots of Peace, over 400 vintners with the Napa Valley Vintners Association. And the Legends of the Vine, Robert Mondavi, hosted a beautiful event at the Robert Mondavi Winery. I told him I didn't have a penny, just armed with a good idea. And he reminded me that when Mienko Grgic, who's featured in the bottom right, snuck a bottle of wine, which is in the book, 1976, in what was called the Paris tasting. They were, the greatest noses in the world smelled the wine and pulled the label off and said, "It's Napa Valley, it's California, these are terrace." And with Robert Mondavi and Mienko Grgic, they brought the Napa Valley to from 17 wineries in 1976 to over 400 today. So they know how to turn an idea into reality. Dianne Disney Miller, daughter of Walt Disney, very humble woman, came to my home and said, I'd like to volunteer, I'd like to help. Well, I was based in the basement of my home, and she never told me her middle name. She was Mrs. Miller, who owned Silverado Vineyards in Napa Valley, and just was a genuine down-to-earth person. Well, one day she took me to lunch as I had the little children all running in the basement, and she said, "Why do you do this for children you don't even know around the world?" And I told her, it is the gift of a child to run the earth without fear of losing a life or limb, to chase a butterfly or pick flowers for their mother, and not to lose a limb to a landmine. So she wrote a check over lunch. It was 6 figures, biggest check I'd ever seen, and said, "Go turn your minds to vines." That's a Mickey. And she goes, "You remind me of Dad." And I said, "Mrs. Miller," when I looked at the check, my eyes got big, and I said, "Who was your father?" And she said, "Walt Disney." So what started in a garage, women have to go subterranean, we go into the basement. But so I had the funds then through the event that Robert Mondavi hosted, and I had $30,000, and the United Nations, UNAUSA, Adopt a Minefield was just starting at this time. And I'm very proud to say Ambassador Bill Lures wrote a lovely letter that Roots of Peace was the first group in the world to adopt a minefield. And those funds were matched by the US Department of State Office of Political Military Affairs, Weapons Removal and Abatement, and their director joined me on the first month of the new millennium. Now, why would I go to Croatia to a minefield? My dearest, dearest husband, Gary, we had 4 children. He said, go turn your dreams into reality. And again, back to cancer, you know, you wonder the legacy of what you want to leave your children. You know, what did we stand for? What did my footsteps represent in life? So I set out on a quest, and this is a photo with the president of Rotary. This is John Hoke, and who joined me as well, and Rotarians matched those funds. I'm very grateful as a proud member of San Francisco Rotary number 2 for the hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been contributed. Peace is a family business, and so when my daughter, actually I'll go back one here, let's see here, turned 13 years old, I took her to a minefield. And it's not a mommy dearest story, but when growing up in Marin, to whom much is given, much is expected. And I wanted my daughter to realize that the newest pair of blue jeans was not the only thing entering her teenage years. And I took her to lunch. I had an interview with, you know, somebody who so looked up to, for 30 years, she'd been #1 ABC 7 news anchor, Cheryl Jennings, who's our moderator today. And she took us to lunch and said, let's start a penny campaign. And our battle cry was peace, 1 penny at a time. And with Cheryl's leadership, as well as my daughter, my 2 heroes, we raised 50 million American pennies to build schools for girls in Afghanistan, which stands strongly today. Landmines also affect animals, and I've had the privilege of having the support of Dr. Jane Goodall, who's featured on the back of my book, Breaking Ground, in her quote of the responsibility, those 8 pounds don't just affect children and farmers, they affect animals. And so this is my dearest husband, Gary, my partner in life. He had left his 10 years with IBM, and we were transferred to Alaska, lived there for several years, and he went to a little company called Adobe Systems. And when they were trying to have a vision of connecting 2 points and they had a long way to fall if it didn't work, they named it Acrobat. So he did well, and 5 years after Roots of Peace, I was working in the basement. He came home and said, honey, I've done well, now I want to do good. And this true success of Roots of Peace is due to my dearest husband, Gary, whom we met during the days of Berkeley when we were both 19 years old, and during the 1970s, the peace movement. We're in the minefields here of Angola, the same exact place where the late Princess Diana had walked. And with the funding of the Penny campaign, we built a soccer field on a former minefield in Angola with $10,000 that the children of the Penny campaign designated to the Catholic charities. And when I was there to see those beautiful African children playing, so proud to play on 3 legs, when I went to their match, I said, what is 3 legs? Well, they all had lost a leg to a landmine. They were playing on 2 crutches and 1 good leg. And when we came back, and my husband being a soccer coach to our 4 children, it's that appreciation for the gift of life to all that we have been blessed with. A few months later, Jerry White, again, my great hero who inspired me with a Minds to Vines toast, came to my doorstep at Roots of Peace, now headquarters on 4th Street, San Rafael, where I grew up. And he said, Heidi, a little boy named Daniel, on February 6, 2010, playing in a rare snowfall, stepped on a landmine. He needs your help. And it was 4th of July in 2 weeks. And Jerry said, you've got to get on a plane. You can do something. And it just tugged at my heartstrings, and again, the support of my husband and family. I ended up going back and forth to Israel and to Palestine, to West Bank, from Ramallah to Jerusalem. We were commuting. Cheryl's husband, Rick Pettibone, joined me, and a year later, in a month, through the support of Jerry and many others, we were able to pass the historic mine action law. And then we needed to get money, which was another huge obstacle. And it costs a lot to take out landmines. You can't just do it on butterflies and good wishes. And so through incredible friends of mine, Shirley and Paul Dean, the owners of Spiriterra Winery, wrote again another six-figure check and said, go turn your minds to vines. So we began the new year, and you can see here, this is not your typical Christmas story. When you see the shepherds of Bethlehem, his right hand, he lost his 10-year-old boy to a landmine. And to my left in the photo is an Israeli colonel. And they both weren't going to go up there. They were not. I insisted upon Israelis and Palestinians demining together. And this photo I'm just always so proud of, because they weren't going to do it. They were like, I'm not working with the Palestinian. I'm not working with the Israeli. And that was showtime. And I stood there as a mother. I said, then let's walk together. And they said, they're going to shoot you. I said, then let them shoot a mother. And we did it. I mean, I did it with grounded footsteps. I didn't believe that was going to happen. And those fields where 8 children had died to a landmine planted in 1948 can now play. They're riding horseback. They're the tikkun olam, which is the beautiful word in the Hebrew faith, to heal the earth. And the 7 species are planted on the former minefields. As you can see from this photo, it took going into the office of Netanyahu and going into the office of President Mahmoud Abbas. It was shuttle diplomacy from the heart of a mother, and those risks were definitely worth the reward. I must say that last week I had the honor of being a Zoom keynote speaker with Genius 100, and it was hosted by Ambassador Ido Aharoni, who contacted me today knowing I was going to be on the Stimson Center, and said he will join me in leading the way by the end of 2020 to bring forth a new Roots of Peace project to help eradicate 1.2 million landmines in the Holy Land today. So as we celebrate the end of this year, it is a long year where we began our footsteps with dear Ambassador Quinn, but these are solid footsteps for peace that are being taken. Afghanistan, of course, after 9/11, we learned of it. Very tragically, people have told me it's Tora Bora and caves. You can't plant your roots of peace. Well, I beg to argue, and went over and found that 70 varietals of grapes grow in Afghanistan. And with funding from USAID, we have planted over 5 million fruit trees in all 34 provinces. These are the pictures with my dear husband and Cheryl Jennings. Cheryl has walked the minefields of the world with me. And when we had to suit up in our battle gear in Kabul and all take different cars because of the fear, if one went off, the other would live. And the picture below is at the ICRC clinic led by Dr. Alberto Cairo. And in that photo, I am the only human being with real legs. Doctor to the left of me pulled up both pant legs, and he was a double amputee, and that little boy had just stepped on a landmine earlier in the day. So Afghanistan remains the most heavily mined country in the world, yet paradoxically it is 80% dependent upon agriculture. And these are my friends. These are the Afghan farmers and families who have the privilege and honor of working with each and every day. Today, through the funding from my country, America, with the ethics that I was raised with, I thank from the heart of the American people and the over $100 million I have managed with funding from USAID, USDA, DOD, European Union, and Asian Development Bank. And I must emphasize when people ask me, why are you growing wine in Afghanistan? Well, fruit of the vine and the work of human hands, we have the choice, the grapevine of a fine bottle of wine, yes, where I come from, the San Francisco, Napa, Sonoma area, but also fresh grapes and raisins, which are respectful to the Muslim culture. So the interfaith respect that Roots of Peace practices and walks each day, from mines to vines, for fresh grapes and raisins are now flourishing on former war-torn lands. This is a proud family. I just smile because I miss them. I can only visit them via Zoom and PowerPoint, but I've been in their homes and they say Tashakur. This is a white paper that my husband Gary wrote. And actually when I met Ambassador, or actually the Tom Vilsack, Secretary of Agriculture, on the back of his business card, he had this quote, which my husband, my incredible businessman, wrote and was verified. But when an average Afghan farmer grows wheat, it's $800 about a year, poppies, $1,200. Roots of Peace, high value crops, grapes, pomegranates, it's $4,000. So it's a no-brainer. It's the economics of peace. These are the proud women farmers. Roots of Peace has trained over 5,000 women, and I'm working with their gender specialists with new funding from USAID and INL. I thank my country and profusely, because this is my report card. This is the business of peace. It's not my report card. It is all those who are working with me, never for me, but with me. And the Afghans, together with a program called CHAMP, it's Commercial Horticultural Agricultural Marketing Program, began in 2010. Average exports from Afghanistan, again, the fruit basket of Central Asia, averaged around 250 million annually. And through the efforts of Roots of Peace funded by USAID, we have taken those numbers up to $1.2 billion this year. And again, we're just getting started. Vietnam, Ambassador Quinn, thank you so much for beginning the year. 2020, when I held the last child who had stepped on a mine, actually, he didn't step on it. He was picking up what he thought was a rock to fix his bicycle. It was a cluster munition and it blew off his face and his left arm. And when I visited him in the hospital in Quang Tri, I was committed to going back and getting him a prosthesis. Several months later, my staff took me to a very remote village in Vinland, and we arrived there, and the mother had the white band and dressed in white. I thought, wow, they know I'm coming. You know, it's a party, and everyone's crying, and then she gets out and hugs me. And in the tradition of Vietnam, the 49th day is the day of reverence when a soul goes to heaven. And that dear little boy, Juan Van Tron, died from, and that's when I asked, I went to MAG, our partners, I said, how much is this gonna cost? Let's just get them all out. The Vietnam War ended in 1975 when I was a junior in high school, and graduating from Berkeley in political economics. You know, I don't want this on my clock when my footsteps are done. So we are leading a campaign to raise $20 million by the end of 2020. And while we can't travel or go back or host fundraisers at the Culinary Institute of America, which so graciously was hosting, we're going to do this virtually. And if I fail, I fail having tried boldly. We're in the business of peace, and I just want to thank all of our partners, our vintners, but this is a very special story of a spice company. This is my dear friend, Mort Gotthelf, and he flew airplanes in the, oopsie, let me go back. Where's Mort? Where'd you go? Well, anyway, let's see here. Mort, there you go. Sorry, the live television. But I'm holding up this, you know, in my Vanna White moment here, but this is a bottle of black pepper, and all the black pepper sold, a percentage of the proceeds will go to Roots of Peace. Our logo is on the back. And Mort, who flew airplanes in and out of Vietnam during the war to take the wounded out, at 85 years young, he has committed to buying buying black pepper from the former battlefields of Quang Tri and giving the world a taste of peace. So that's my presentation. You can find the details of the story in my book available. Here's my pitch on Amazon.com. And again, I'm so proud. A percentage of the proceeds goes back to turning mines to vines. So as Prince Harry had said when Mag and Halo invited me to Kensington Palace again, April 4th, 2017. He called forth a mind-free world by 2025. So as a mother and now a grandmother of 3 children, I'm going to do everything I can to help that young man's dream come true. So please join me. Let's create a mind-free world. It's something we can do. So it all starts with solid roots and rootspeace.org and Tasha Kaur. Thank you.
Tasha Kaur, and come on.
Come on, Tasha Kaur. Salam alaikum.
Heidi, you have so much to say, and we have questions from folks, but I want to just go back to your picture of Mort, God help, and what a wonderful man he is. And his spice company is one of the top in the country for gourmet spices. And as far as I know, this is the first American company to embrace your spices because it's premier.
Yes. Yes, yes, and we're going to be launching it. Well, we're launching it officially here, but you know, it's going on the shelves 4th of July. So again, we're celebrating the best of America. You know, the world sees a lot going on right now, but you know, we're a humanitarian, not political, and just deeply committed to doing something. And I think, you know, in a small way, businesses can contribute on all sorts of levels. Not only the California vintners, but you know, the pairing of food and wine. You know. Creating, you know, this beautiful recipe for peace. We need to be more creative in this world. We're forced to now with Zoom, but let's use our energy for positive results. And the most positive way, Cheryl, having walked through the minefields of the world with you, is to you know, literally turn minds to vines.
How important is it to have that kind of business partnership where they're actually going to, even though they act locally, they are operating on a global level? I'm inviting other companies to join you if there's a way to take advantage of the work of Roots and the projects
Exactly.
overseas.
Well, Cheryl, I think it's as creative and wide as we want to make it. I mean, if we're going to demine the world, it's going to cost money. And we can't just leave those fields barren. We have to put people back to work. For the land that is held hostage by landmines is economically viable for food security. And, you know, this week I had the honor and privilege of talking to the senior government officials in Pakistan through the introduction of Heidi Kuhn, another senior advisor to Roots of Peace. I began the year with my husband in Islamabad several years ago, and we saw the importance of these fresh fruits going across, again, contentious borders, just like Israel and Palestine. You know, there's borders, but there's people on both sides. And people right now with the double down of COVID-19, we are in real time right now trying to get those fresh fruits across contentious borders and sold into new markets. These are obstacles, but obstacles we can overcome. So, you know, the support of trucking companies, of Caterpillar Tractor. I mean, you know, let's get the wheels moving forward. I mean, this is good business for everyone. And, you know, as you know, we're going to need to feed the world. This is food security at the highest level. It's a pragmatic solution. And as Ambassador Quinn so wisely said, the battle cry is peace through agriculture. You give people jobs in Afghanistan, in the regions where, again, we're so blessed and grateful to be funded by USAID. But we're working in tough provinces, Nangarhar, you know, Baghli, Sfata, Helmand, you know, Kandahar, places, you know, it's not my common cocktail party conversation in Marin County. People don't know it, but we should know those names. We need to care, and we need to step it up.
I have a question from one of our viewers. We have a lot of international viewers watching today. This is from Saeed Nahibullah Sadat from Afghanistan. He wants to know if you have plans for international distribution because he wants to buy a copy locally. He doesn't have access to Amazon.
Well, that's a great question for Simon & Schuster, my distributor, and Raoul Goff, the president owner, and actually I grew up next door to him. He is literally the boy next door, who the president of Inside Editions. So if Afghanistan doesn't have access to Amazon, I will find a way, sir, to get those books over to you. Each chapter of the book begins with a quote from a different faith, the Holy Quran, the Bible, Rumi, Confucius, because as the introduction by Her Majesty Queen Noor, who I asked to write maybe a sentence, she read the book and came back with 4 pages. And it's very inspirational in her words, because we are all daughters and sons of Abraham. You cut us, we bleed. And you plant a seed, it grows. So I think you'll enjoy the book and how we got into Afghanistan. It's quite a story, because as Cheryl knows, people said, like Mickey Mouse, you have to be partially deaf. You know, Dianne Disney Miller told me her father, Walt Disney, had 330 no's before when he told the world that a mouse with ears is going to change the world. Well, everybody said, no, that you're get out of town, you're crazy. And it took that 330th no to finally turn it into a yes. So we'll find a way and make this happen.
Heidi, in your book, I want to get back to one of the chapters that we haven't talked about. You say that you were inspired by Princess Diana, and we showed the video with her son carrying her mission on. In your book, you talk about a young woman who came up to you at a speaking engagement in Portugal under a lemon tree, and how that dramatically changed things for you.
That was just a year ago, last May, in 2019. I was invited as a keynote speaker in the southern shores of Portugal by the Healing Summit. It was a passionate woman, Anne and Elizabeth. And, you know, I thought, what can I talk about? I mean, a healing summit. And then I thought, you know, we're healing the world. We need to get this into the ears of a large group of people. So once again, it was my daughter's birthday, and May 1st. And I took Kylie with me, and you know, I spoke passionately and truthfully about the 3 weeks after the tragic death of Diana and the Minds to Minds Global Toast to Peace. Well, you get exhausted after speaking at a major conference like that, and Kylie and I just went for a mother-daughter lunch under a little lemon tree, kind of trying to hide out and just have girl time. And a beautiful, stately woman walked up with her plate of food and said very diplomatically, "May I join you?" And we looked at each other and we said, "Please." And so she sat down and she introduced herself as Jasmine. And with tears in her eyes, she said, "I don't know quite how to tell you this, but my brother was also in the car when Diana died. I'm Jasmine Al-Fayed, and Dodi Al-Fayed was my brother." And after we hugged, and I still get tears talking about it, I mean, you just couldn't have found each other if you had to in the world. And she spoke so deeply about when she was 16 years old and how her brother had invited her to join with his new friend, Princess Diana, and her 2 boys. And they had a summer on a sailboat, on a yacht, you know, 3 teenagers, kids, just enjoying their youth and their brother and their mom. And Diana, you know, was very, very kind and sincere, according to Jasmine, and said, "You know, Jasmine, what do you want to be when you grow up?" And she goes, "Oh, I want to be a fashion designer." And she said, "You have to pursue your dreams." And you know, the vacation continued on. I think they were eating pizza, she described it to me, and it ended. And as she was going back home to her mother, Diana's had her butler there with a beautiful package with a big bow on it, and he presented it to Jasmine, and she opened it up, and it was the blue Versace off the shoulder dress, and presented it. Diana gave it to her as an inspiration to pursue her dreams. So she was just elated. I think a few days later, Versace, of course, was killed. And a month later, her brother and Diana were both gone. So she told me she took that beautiful blue Versace dress and folded it like a sad flag and put it under her bed for over a decade, for a landmine had gone off in her life, metaphorically. Well, when I met Jasmine and we had that little lunch under the lemon tree, together, the 3 of us turned lemons into lemonade, and she donated the beautiful Versace dress to loan to Roots of Peace for the Roots of Peace Minds to Vines exhibit. It was debuting at the Leonardo Museum in Salt Lake City, coinciding with the United Nations 68th civil society conference, and that beautiful blue dress is juxtaposed next to Diana's blue halo truss, very famous photo of her, where Paul Heslop had sold the Halo Trust logo, but the blue of the demining suit and juxtaposed with the blue of the beautiful Versace gown. It's there today. It's closed, but we hope to have a virtual walkthrough, and we thank our partners, the Halo Trust and also MAG, for donating the demining equipment that is there, but it is the inspiration of that dress. And my deepest gratitude forever to Jasmine for flying from London to Salt Lake City, Utah with you, Cheryl, and as you were the MC at that beautiful event. So I don't mean to go so long on that, but it's just very deep, and to me it was just so full circle. Again, my grandmother's words, coincidence is a miracle in which God prefers to remain anonymous, and I don't believe in accidents.
All right, we have a question from the audience, and I want to bring the ambassador back in on this one. The audience member is interested in knowing whether there have been any international conferences to bring together governmental and private donors. And so perhaps you can join in on that, Ambassador.
Well, I've been 20 years outside of government. And for those 20 years, working on food security, not really on demining. So there have been, of course, a number of efforts. There have been an international convention to ban landmines. Not all countries have signed up to that, but there were, I think in the 1990s, there came a great awareness because of what had happened in places like Cambodia about demining and funding of it. And I think it's a proud statement for the United States to make that over several administrations, the US government has consistently provided funding in support of demining operations and training deminers in a number of countries. So I'm probably not the one to give the most definitive information on that, but the humanitarian aspects of any problem about hunger, and I think about like demining and healing the wounds of those who have been innocent and hurt, can bring people together across big differences. So you saw Heidi is there in the Holy Land, meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu, meeting with Mohammed Abbas, the Palestinian leader. And it's on issues like that that you can begin to weave peace together. So that's why you see we've known each other only 8 months, but I'm pleased to be an advisor to Heidi. And I even brought Heidi, I wanted you to see, I've got my Roots of Peace hat from our travel to Quang Tri, and I'm wearing it proudly here. And with the book, I'm the next phase of my life in foreign affairs. Part of it's going to be working with you on this noble mission. And for all of you who have been watching, and you see the when I said the mesmerizing effect Heidi Kuhn has. She's like the Pied Piper of with her passion and commitment and sincerity. People can't help but want to follow on that. And those who and I'm sure Heidi would agree because she collected pennies. So if you can write a 6-figure check, that's wonderful. But any amount of money in this effort, because it's a long, hard, and difficult mission. But we have to get rid of and eradicate COVID-19. We have to eradicate landmines and UXOs.
Yes. Yes, and we have the ability, dear Ambassador, to do that. And I want to just thank you so much for your service to Cambodia. You know, several years ago, the U.S. Department of State, PMWRA, again, the short acronym for Political Military Affairs, Weapons Removal and Abatement, invited me on the 8th floor of the State Department to deliver a speech. And Colin Powell was there, and I had brought Skip Rhodes from Chevron Corporation. And at the end of the speech, Chevron gave $30,000 to Roots of Peace to remove landmines in Battambang in Cameroon region.
Oh.
And we partnered with MAG, the Mines Advisory Group. I gave every single dollar of that $30,000 donation to them. And then we partnered with the Lutheran World Federation and planted rice and on the former battlefield. So, you know, again, you know, mines to sustainable agricultural crops. And I've never yet been to Cambodia. I've been to Vietnam, but as we work with the Stimson Center, expand our impact in Southeast Asia, I like to think big, you know, as my husband, you know, has to put sunglasses on and blinders. But in all seriousness, you know, as we seek to remove the landmines in Vietnam, why not also Cambodia and Laos and Myanmar? And let's clean these landmines. Let's take a chunk out of Southeast Asia and put the agricultural crops. You know, our team over there, 3,000 Vietnamese farmers have been trained by a woman, Lian, whom you met, and Dr. Bin. And we're expanding that through funding from Frank Yi in China, who's given Roots of Peace 1 million Chinese RMB to, you know, and this is China reaching over to Vietnam. I mean, not politically the best of friends, perhaps, you know, who knows whether we are. I'm friends with the Chinese, and we've had the Chinese consul general, the Vietnamese consul general. You know, again, landmines know no borders, they know no color. And for thousands and thousands of years, when a seed is planted with sunlight, water, and a human hand, it will grow. You plant a landmine, it's a lethal harvest for generations to come. It's a Mickey, as Dianne Disney Miller said.
So
right,
we should recruit Spike Lee.
Oh, there you go.
Yes,
Yep.
yes. Did you hear that, Spike?
Yes.
And Prince Harry just moved down to Hollywood, so you know, stranger things can happen.
And you know, at a time of great sensitivity about racial issues, racism in our society, terrible, painful murder of George Floyd. But interestingly, in the Vietnam War, out in the jungle, was the one time and place where I saw race disappear, if only momentarily, because Black African-American soldiers and American white soldiers, or Hispanic, Asian, all were bound together as Americans and would come to each other's aid, no matter, and never ask the race, religion, ethnicity, or need to know of whoever was in trouble. You always came because they were Americans and you had this commitment to each other. And wouldn't it be wonderful if somehow, in doing something about landmines,
Wow.
coming off that movie
Wow.
about Spike Lee's
Wow.
inspiration,
Wow.
we could
Wow.
help heal some of the open wound in our society today.
It's an amazing vision, Ambassador. And, you know, all three of our grandchildren are of color. You know, I proudly say they're of color. They're children of the world. And Black lives do matter. And what if we were to join hands to take out the mines in Angola? Black lives matter because you don't step on a landmine. You don't leave a landmine in the ground for a child to lose a limb. So, you know, I can't solve the political issues in my country, but maybe I can get one more landmine out. So a child living in Africa, the most heavily mined continent in the world, could avoid losing a life or limb. Maybe that's a way that I could act, in a non-violent way in honor of Dr. Martin Luther King. That his name should be ensconced with the United Nations Landmine Awareness Day, April 4th, for that's the day he was assassinated. And Cheryl knows that we're both here speaking in the San Francisco Bay Area, and a reminder that tomorrow, the 26th of June, is the 75th anniversary of the signing of the United Nations Charter at the War Memorial in San Francisco. Now, rather than just toasting to an incredible, vision that became the UN and roll our eyes and, let's do something. Let's do something to commemorate tomorrow. My grandfather, Bill Thomas, was in the room. He was president of Rotary San Francisco #2. Rotary had a huge part in the signing of the UN Charter. It was brought to New York because people didn't care back then about the Pacific Rim. They felt that healing needed to be done with Europe. So the vision began beneath the redwood trees of Muir Woods in Marin County, these beautiful cathedrals of peace. And Franklin Delano Roosevelt called the world, the original delegates of the UN, to gather under what he called the Temples of Peace. He died the month before his vision turned into reality. And on May 19th, 1945, the original delegates gathered under those temples of peace. And that is the inspiration for me for Roots of Peace, coming from the heart of Marin County, because it's those deep roots. The redwood trees, each year they grow, represent a different circle of life. And Jerry White and I walk through those redwood trees. I'm sure he'll remember that beautiful, beautiful day. And I think Christian was just a little baby, my son. And we looked up and just thought what a long way it is to go to turn this idea into reality. But, it takes patience, as nature does when you plant a seed. But the Roots of Peace have grown.
Quick question. This is from the Embassy of Vietnam in Washington, D.C. To the point where you were both talking about, this is the 25th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the United States and Vietnam, and 45 years since the end of the war. So the question is one that you just answered, that we maybe can come up with something. Does Roots of Peace have any plans to recognize this occasion? I think I see the two of you involved in something here.
Ambassador, let's do that right now. And it's
So Heidi and I were both supposed to be in Hanoi this week on these days to take part in the planned celebration of the 25th anniversary of establishing diplomatic relations. It's a joint Vietnamese US government had put this together. We had been invited, accepted to come. And now with the virus, of course, it all has been now delayed to October. I'm still committed to go. I hope, knock wood, that I can. I was involved. I was Deputy Assistant Secretary of State in 1990 when there was zero relationship between the US and Vietnam. And along with leadership of President Bush 41 and Secretary Baker and others, and we were able to take some steps and build step by step. And within 5 years, we had people in Vietnam, we had Vietnamese diplomats in Washington, D.C., and we had built that bridge, reconstructed that bridge to begin diplomatic relations. And as I mentioned, the first gesture on the part of the US government, $1 million. I was able to go up and tell Senator Pat Leahy from Vermont, has been an advocate for helping war victims, that we were doing this. He was so pleased. Once again, was a way of uniting Republicans and Democrats, healing, helping innocent people in a time of stress. So I was at a reception with Heidi, with Ambassador Ngop from Vietnamese embassy, doing a great job and so we're very pleased, and I'm certainly committed to being there, either by Zoom or whatever, and to celebrate the friendship now between the United States and Vietnam after that long, difficult conflict.
Well, Ambassador, and your words are always so poignant and inspirational. And you know, July 12th, I believe, is the date that President Bill Clinton was in Hanoi and really brought forth that friendship, that very tender friendship. That was 2 years before Roots of Peace had started. So again, you and I, you have many things to do, Ambassador, and having just retired from one of the most prestigious positions as president of the World Food Prize, you decided, as my husband did, and many of our good friends, to take intentional footsteps on January 1st, because we wanted to begin this year with a clear 2020 vision to eradicate all explosive remnants of war from the face of Quang Tri province. And it's doable, 20 million by 2020. And so we've got a few weeks to go before July 12th. And I always love speaking at the Stimson Center because it's just not talking into the air. Things happen at the Stimson Center. Things happen. Ideas are turned into reality. And it's a place of tremendous action. Brian, thank you so much for this opportunity. Again, just like 23 years ago when I made a Minds to Vines toast, I don't know how we're going to get there. I don't have battle plans for peace, but I'm sure going to try. And with the book, Breaking Ground, I just want to say thank you so much to Her Majesty Queen Noor, and most especially, I have not mentioned Dr. Ken Rutherford, a double amputee who put his voice to this book, and to read his words, how he was in Africa, you know, and a young man, and you know, 2 legs, beautiful legs, handsome, beautiful legs blown off. He's now a father of 4 and took that on behalf of the children. So I hope you'll get the book to read it, not for my sake, but for the sake of eradicating the mines through the percentage of the proceeds. I'd also like to profusely thank Speaker Nancy Pelosi. She doesn't often, very rarely, puts her name on a book, but you know, again, as a proud American, I'm proud of Cindy McCain, because these are women, bipartisan women, where we can get together and agree that our children and our grandchildren deserve better. 60 million landmines in 60 countries is not acceptable. Ambassador George Moose, who fought in the Vietnam War with you, Ambassador, sir. Thank you to Ambassador Moose, the vice chair of the U.S. Institute for Peace. We had an event planned there physically, didn't happen, canceled, postponed. Pat Mitchell, the chair of the Sundance Institute and the first woman CEO of PBS. Strong Woman, Dangerous Women is her book. I hope you'll all get that as well. And of course, Dr. Jane Goodall. So General John F. Campbell, Cheryl Jennings, Gillian Sorensen, Judy Collins, too many names to mention, have wrote quotes in the book. So thank you, thank you, thank you. It's not for me to, but if the book may be an instrument to help save the lives of other innocent victims around the world, then I've made my footsteps count. And thank you for joining my 62nd birthday with me in a minefield, Ambassador. Putting our thumb on that thing and detonating that one bomb, that blast. It could have been a child. It was bittersweet. You know, I was so proud to get one more out, but then tears rolling down because I realized I have so many more to go. And I'm just one mom, one grandma, you know, one granny for peace. But I think with all of this, what is that? What is the e pluribus unum? From many comes one. So there's my proud American mother, a battle cry for peace. E pluribus unum with the leadership of the Stimson Center. Thank you. Thank you to Courtney, to Katie, all those who are behind the scenes making this happen as we stumble through this new world of Zoom together.
We have about 10 minutes left, and we have many questions, and you also have a video that you would like to show, Heidi. Do we want to go to that now? You want to get that in?
But Cheryl, I think that's a brilliant idea because, you know, there was things happening real time. I am CEO of Roots of Peace and shelter at home with my husband. And we are constantly on Zoom calls, be it in Afghanistan, Islamabad this week, Vietnam. We have staff who are out there, shelter in place, and making these incredible Harvest of Hope 2020 happen with the partnership getting fruits across contentious borders from Afghanistan, Pakistan, into India, doubling and tripling their income.
All right, well, let's roll that video. It's a look at Roots of Peace's work in Afghanistan and what President Ashraf Ghani wants for his country.
President Ashraf Ghani says that he wants Afghanistan to be an exporting machine and believes the San Rafael-based charity Roots of Peace is helping to provide the tools to be a game changer for his country with the help of U.S. aid.
It's a reborn love. People are re-engaging with their country.
Afghanistan's new president, Ashraf Ghani, met recently with Roots of Peace founders Heidi and Gary Kuhn and me to talk about moving his country's economy from aid to trade.
I want to thank Roots of Peace for their initiatives, and I'd be very encouraging of scaling up the effort.
Roots of Peace is eager to expand its work with farmers and traders so they can stand on their own. I saw their pilot project in 2005 during my first visit to Afghanistan, when Roots of Peace was removing landmines and helping starving farmers grow food for their families. Now, thanks to long-term funding from U.S. aid, a major transformation is underway to improve the agricultural economy. The new president told me that it is crucial for the world to help Afghanistan create jobs, because jobs can be a powerful weapon to fight the drug trade and terrorism.
The image of a number of small drug runners is not the image of the majority of the people. It's the type of threats that, if congregated around our neighborhood, are threats to the entire system of government.
In spite of those threats, Afghanistan is a country on the move, finally, after decades of war.
Present-day Kabul at night, the 5th fastest growing city in the world. That's progress, that's success, and that could only happen with a coalition of the security that is provided.
General John Campbell leads the NATO mission in Afghanistan. He talked with me at the military base in Kabul about the important contributions by Roots of Peace.
Their dedication, their passion, their energy for the Afghan people is pretty remarkable.
Roots of Peace clearly have shown that they're dedicated to development here, and they have some very impressive results.
Bill Hammock is head of the USAID mission in Afghanistan, the largest in the world.
They've been funding our programs and supporting our efforts. They've been a huge supporter of us, which is great. It's enabled us to do many good things in this country.
Hammock and his team met with the Kuhns in Afghanistan to talk about President Ghani's goal: drive the agricultural economy faster, link more farmers and more traders to international markets.
We've seen a shift now whereby farmers are actually making money, and there's a growing number of Afghan traders that are helping out.
The Roots of Peace team producing those impressive results includes experts in science and business.
We've gone from market demand to identifying the types of product that buyers want, and then working backwards and saying, this is a product that you should be growing, and this is how you should take care of that product.
Proper irrigation is important, thinning is important, fertilizer.
Ahmad Shah trains farmers on ways to grow the best grapes and pomegranates. He says it took time to convince the farmers to try new ideas.
They were fighting with us. Why you are disturbing our wines? This is from my mother, this is from my father.
We have taken farmers to international expositions, international markets, to meet with the buyers in those markets. They needed to understand the big picture.
We've gone from what are basically wholesale markets to directly selling to supermarket chains. Those aspects they would classify as being game-changing
Millions of dollars of deals are starting to happen thanks to that partnership with USAID. And now President Ghani has jumped in and is already promoting Afghanistan's produce.
Without the sons and daughters of farmers believing that they can be presidents, ministers, entrepreneurs, we will not have a prosperous country.
And tomorrow night, we're going to hear from President Ghani again on why he is asking Silicon Valley to help him rebuild his country. His trusted advisor in San Jose is working on those connections, and they both say the opportunities are only limited by our imaginations.
President Ghani seems very progressive.
Absolutely. He wants to get this done right now.
Yeah. Thanks, Cheryl.
Sure.
Well, Heidi, that really does showcase the hard work of 20 years in Afghanistan. We only have
we
have less than 5 minutes. So I'm hoping, and for people who didn't get their questions answered, my apologies. Heidi will answer those offline, so they will be sent to Heidi so she can respond to you. But since we have a limited time left, sadly, I'd like to have one final comment from the ambassador, and then also wrap it up.
On that. I think my comment would be, I never would have expected that I'd have spent 52 years bookended by dealing with landmines. But thank goodness that I was not assigned to London, Paris, or Vienna, and that I ended up out in remote villages, not only in Vietnam, but Cambodia, Philippines, Lebanon, because it's there where the victims of landmines, where the hungry are, and it's a noble mission to be involved personally and for our country to be making the world healed and better, more healthy, more prosperous.
Thank you, Ambassador. And Heidi, we have about 2 minutes left. So final remarks on where you're going to take all of this with the ambassador.
Yeah.
I certainly just want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to the Stimson Center, to you, Cheryl, for walking the minefields of the world with me, Ambassador, for walking the talk on January 1, 2020, with a vision for a mine-free Quang Tri province. There's many challenges in my country here in America right now. We all know that. But I just would like to say thank you to my country. Thank you to the funding. Thank you for the American dream is alive and well. And if a mother can do this from her heart, a cancer survivor, cancer is a landmine, and landmines are a cancer to the earth. Let's get together and remove them and plant the roots of peace on earth now.
Real quick, your next campaign you mentioned is with Israel and the West Bank?
Yes, I had a wonderful speech last week with Visions 100, and Ido Aharoni, the former Israeli Consul General to New York, who knows quite a few people, is offered to partner with me and with Daniel Yuval, and we're going to identify in the next few days another minefield. And my vision at the end of 2020 is to end this incredibly challenging year, either physically or on Zoom, the season of peace on earth. And Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa. Let's make the Holy Land holy for all children to walk in both Israel and Palestine. Remove these 1.2 million landmines and to plant the 7 species, plant the roots of peace on earth.
All right, Ms. Heidi. Ambassador Quinn, thank you so much. Brian Finley, the Stimson Center, you all are such a joy to work with. This is the book, Breaking Ground. Ms. Heidi Kuhn, Breaking Ground, Breaking Barriers, the Economics of Peace, the Business of Peace. And you're going to see much more out of this dynamic duo in the future, I'm sure. So it's
thank you, Ambassador.
All right. I'm so sorry we are out of time, but I'm so grateful for all of those of you who tuned in and joined us today on the Stimson Center line. And thank you for this opportunity. And be safe, everyone. Be well.